Hello, everyone. This is Barb Shor, and I'm Donna DeBonis. We're doing Barb's interview for today for our CSU 40-year class reunion. So, hello, Barb. Boy, oh boy, what have you been doing for the past 40 years? Now, my gosh, some people, have a lot to say, others not all that much, but I have a feeling we're going to have a very fruitful conversation here.
Yeah, I
And
think
my
so.
first question is just it's a simple one. And it's like what happened with you when you had CSU in your rear view mirror? Did you like have a job to go to? Did you take some time? Did you do interviews? Like what did you do the day after and the week after? After,
Day,
school's
well,
over,
not quite
day
the day
after.
after, but very soon after, I took a big trip with my dog, and I took boards. I took state boards in 4 different states. I went to
Oh.
Colorado, Oregon, Idaho, and California. And
Hmm.
on that trip, when I went down to California, I had met a veterinarian who worked at the San Diego Zoo and Wild Animal Park. And so I
Hmm.
was visiting there, and I met this guy, Rich, who was a professor at University of Pacific, and he taught
Hmm.
animal behavior. He traveled all over the world. He was just this cool guy, and he was taking a group to Africa.
Oh.
So I had dreamed of Africa my whole life. So I went. I went on this trip, and it was rich and four men, all much older than me. I was the only woman, and it was fantastic. I had the best time, and I totally fell in love with Africa. And I also kind of fell in love with this guy, my tour guide. And
Well, sure, why not? I mean,
I know.
that's just that perfect opportunity. So how long did you stay in Africa for that
I
trip?
was there. I think we were there a couple weeks on this safari with all these guys, and then I stayed another couple weeks. I was looking for jobs, as I've done many times in Africa, and it was nearly
Yeah.
impossible. But I had some great adventures while I was there. I uh, I got to see the mountain gorillas before they were famous, and way
Hmm.
in this remote place in Rwanda, and it was fantastic. And I got to do a walk, like a walking trip with these people. This guy was a Samburu man from
Hmm.
Kenya, and
Hmm.
I got to meet his whole family and live in one of the huts for a day with no sleep. There were goats and cows and everything inside, and smoke going on all the time.
Oh my God. But
But it
but
was
boy, what
kind
a
of
real
amazing.
experience. I mean, something like that will capture your passion. Did you take a lot of pictures? Because everybody I talk to who's been to Africa, that's been their big deal. Like that they call it a photographic safari instead of, as we remember growing up, the hunting safaris like on Tarzan and everything. But the
Yeah,
pictures
I
seem to be the big deal.
I took lots of
Hmm.
I love to take pictures, and I have lots of pictures, and I've done actually slideshows when I came back. I've been to Africa 5 times, and
Oh my gosh.
I've done
Hmm.
slideshows for kids and for adults, and it's just been my true love, my passion has been going to Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool because the whole point is that there are so many remarkable species of animals that you get to see. Like when I go places like Disney World and go into their little wild animal, they call it the animal part of the park there. It's nothing. You just drive around and like, oh, there's a couple of elephants. I imagine that yours was just completely imbued with all different kinds of animals constantly, and really that would have been mind-boggling. Especially, you remember when we were doing the Raptor program at CSU, and
Yep.
that kind of was our only experience so to speak, right, with wild animals for the
Not
most part,
me.
right?
When I
Oh,
was in vet school, I was doing volunteer work with Colorado Division of Wildlife a lot, and Dr. Chuck Hibbler and Terry Spraker. They were real involved with wildlife, and I did everything I could with those guys. Plus, I had worked at the Denver Zoo and did a preceptorship there my last year. So I was into it, and I did a
that
lot of,
was stuff that I'd never even heard of that was
yeah.
going on. Wow, that's amazing. Well, I guess if you have your eye on it, you're going to find those
Oh yeah, I
opportunities.
was always
Yeah,
looking. I
yeah,
worked
yeah.
at a primate center the first summer of vet school, and I worked on a ranch the second summer with coyotes and sheep doing a research study. We had coyotes and sheep and Commodore dogs. And so,
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was even before everybody knew about livestock protection dogs.
yep,
That's awesome. Now it's a big deal. People
is
are
it?
all into that when they have, yeah, here on Whidbey Island anyway. People are always advertising to try to get some livestock protection dogs because they come out here and have their little hobby farms, and we have a pretty significant coyote population. So anyway, it's a big deal over here now, and you never used to see anybody really talk about that as an entity of protection.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were doing all of that stuff from the get-go. So what happened when you came back? Had you sent off some your resume to some places before you took your trip, or what?
No, 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 no. When I came back, I moved to California to be with this guy, Rich, my tour guide. And we talked about getting married, which never happened. But I lived in California, in Stockton, California, which was okay. And I worked
Mm-hmm.
in two veterinary practices, part-time in two. One was in Stockton, and one was in a little town, Tracy, which was about a half-hour drive. And it was really cool because my boss in Stockton was really up on things, and it was just when computers were coming in. We didn't know
Oh,
anything about
right.
computers, but he was so excited. He was just doing all this stuff on the computer. The other guy that I worked with in Tracy was this old timey vet. I just adored him. And I had to teach him about giving fluids and some of the newer, newfangled stuff. But he
Mm-hmm.
taught me so much about people, and he had staff that had been with him for years and years and years. And
Oh,
they just
yeah.
loved him because he was such a good.
Remember those days. Yeah.
So I got to see kind of two different worlds, and it was really great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came back to Colorado, and I went to work in a practice, Harvey Bird and Animal Hospital in Denver, and I worked with
Mm-hmm.
Dave Berman, who is in our
Oh,
class. So we
yeah,
were
yeah.
together for a while. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then afterwards, I got accepted to a residency at UC Davis. Um, and that's where I went. I went back to California and worked in this residency. Dr. Murray Fowler had, was
Yeah. He
was
wrote the zoological textbook,
yeah,
right?
he was kind of
So,
the father of zoo medicine. Yeah.
yeah, so what was that residency called?
It was called Residency in Non-Domestic Animal Medicine.
Wow. Oh my
And,
goodness.
and it was intense, I will say. Dr. Fowler was writing a book on llamas, so he was kind of out of the picture on sabbatical. The previous resident was my supervisor that year.
Hmm.
She was a go-getter. I could not keep up with her. She was brilliant. She was just going, living on coffee, and going. And I don't have that same personality, but I was in charge of the whole ward, and we had a couple techs, and we had lots of students going through. We were the primary veterinarians for Sacramento Zoo and Mickey Grove Zoo, which is in Lodi. We worked with wildlife. We worked with people and their exotic pets. It was a lot. We
It sounds
also,
like you were just getting this massive training in non-domestic animals, and that would have set you up to be, working at a zoo.
well,
And-
that's
and-
what it would seem.
Yeah.
And I did learn a lot. It was
Hmm.
but I was exhausted.
Yeah.
Now, even after I was there as the sole resident, I think the next year they had two, and now they've got, I don't know, 9 or 10 or 11. It's grown tremendously, but
Uh-huh.
it was exhausting. And also, I talked to Dr. Fowler after a year. I was supposed to be there 2 years, and I talked to him and I said, my real passion is wild animals, not ones in cages.
Oh, that's a big distinction. I don't think that really was that apparent. Okay, sure. That makes sense. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and zoos are animals in cages. And I just got to
Sure.
a point where that wasn't my thing. And so he helped me set up a new program, a new part of the residency with California Fish and Game. And I did that for 2 years. So I had this
Oh,
very glorious job where I drove the mountains of Northern California every day with a truck, a Dodge Ram truck, and I picked up dead deer off the roads. I,
they were a little heavy, weren't they? How'd
they
you
built
get
me,
them in?
they built me this, there was a boom in the truck, and at the end
Oh.
of the boom was a winch, so
Mhm.
I could haul them up into the truck. And then I would take them and drop them in the woods and cut them up. I did necropsies on them. And I collected certain organs and froze them. And in the wintertime, I would go back to the lab in Sacramento
Mhm.
and measure the amount of fat on the tissues. And so it was a deer condition study. And I wrote a whole manual of how to do all this stuff at the end. So it
Wow.
was a bit gruesome at times. I had hunters who'd been hunting forever, and they said, "How can you do this work? Because it can get really stinky." But I love being on my own in the mountains. It was so beautiful, and I had this
Mm.
whole network of guys who worked on the roads in the forestry department, and they would alert me when they'd find a dead deer on the road. So I
Okay.
had this whole system and a whole community, and it was, in that way, it was really nice. It was really nice. So I did that
Mhm.
for 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I've always loved that. That was my favorite job when I had an ambulatory practice. And anytime I've had any kind of work where I was just driving around by myself, I was really happy too. You get to enjoy the rural area, and
Yeah.
that definitely is my thing as well. So my goodness, so you had your residency after that. Then what?
So so I finished my residency, and then I went back to Africa for a whole year. And
Oh,
a whole year. And it was the best year of my life. I
oh
was
my
based in Nairobi in Kenya.
God.
And again, I was looking and looking and looking for work, for jobs. And I wasn't successful finding a real job. You'd had to have a PhD and you have to have grant money. They want to hire local people, which
Hmm.
I understand. But instead, I got to house sit a number of times. I got to do some work for a veterinarian who was on holiday for a couple months. So I took over his work. And then
Oh,
I
mhm.
had these amazing projects. I did a wild dog. We followed wild dogs for a behavior study, which was really exciting. We followed them on the hunt in this Land Rover and just followed them and watched them, and it was great. And then
Mhm.
I worked on a Cape Buffalo study where with a Canadian veterinarian who I had heard about all through vet school. And I always wanted to meet him. His name was Lars Karstad. And I worked with him and his wife and a Kenyan veterinarian. And we went to Masai Mara, I just loved it there. And we would dart Cape Buffalo and do measurements, and it was a rinderpest study to see if the
Mhm.
buffalo carried rinderpest.
Mhm.
Um, but every day we would just drive around and see millions of animals, and it was just incredible. I stayed in a little tent by myself, like an army tent, which you
Yeah,
probably know about,
yeah.
and It was just, oh, I just
So
loved
this
it.
was all in the days before we really had the internet, so you can make those kinds of connections. It sounds to me like you made some real solid connections when you went there, and then you followed that up consistently, perhaps by writing to people and sending out query letters or what have you. But it's just kind of amazing if you think about it. You said, "Hey, I wanted to go to Africa, see if I can find like a steady job, so to speak. So you have an income, you have a place where you're living, can maybe take some forays from there. But ultimately, you just kind of cobbled something together that
Yeah,
worked.
yeah,
And really, you're ahead of your time because that's something that um, that uh, that a lot of people do nowadays. I mean, think about the folks that are what they call digital nomads, and they're in their vans and they're just doing whatever job they can do from the internet, and they're
yeah,
driving around and exploring not just America, but they go to places like Europe or what have you. And so, the only thing is that if you would have had, like a converted van and been on the road, that totally, you would have been 30 years ahead of your time. But as it was, you did something incredibly unique and something that was not even an idea when we were in vet school. It wasn't even discussed as far. Oh, here's an option.
yeah,
Instead, many of us went out and, of course, went to go work for somebody. And for whatever reason, some of us didn't end up staying with whoever they worked for and found they were happier on their own and doing their own thing as a business. So it's kind of interesting to see that you could have a very fulfilling and satisfying lifestyle. And actually, I try to impart that to anybody I talk to nowadays who's troubled with trying to find, oh my God, I've got to get that job and have everything. And it's
yeah.
like, no, you can be very fulfilled. And it's remarkable that you did that back then. So were you at the point where you were coming to the end where you really couldn't find any other options there and felt like you had to get back and maybe earn some solid money, or were your student loans
Yeah,
coming due or what? Or
yeah,
you didn't have
yeah,
student loans, did you?
yeah, I did.
Oh,
I
you
did.
did. Okay.
Yeah. But I came back because I had a year flight, reservations for a year, and it was kind of up in a year. And I thought, I do need to get back to real life. And
Mm.
so I kind of wanted to be normal,
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah, the security.
I
Hmm.
wanted to settle down somewhere. And I thought very seriously about getting a PhD in pathology so I could, in wildlife pathology.
Oh, yeah.
But I was accepted to two programs, Texas and Wisconsin.
Hmm.
And I checked out both. And first of all, I didn't think I could handle a lot more school. But second of all, I found out that in these programs, they have captive animals. One of them had coyotes in cages, little cages. And
Mm.
they would infect these animals with awful diseases
Mm.
and then kill them and necropsy them and then find out what was going on. I couldn't do it. I
No,
didn't.
that break, yeah, yeah, I totally get it. I worked for the USDA FSIS for a while in slaughterhouses, and it was untenable,
No,
completely
I couldn't.
untenable for
I
me. Yeah.
could. I just wouldn't do it. So
Mhm.
that's when I decided, okay, I'll try to be normal. and, and
As the world defines normal. Okay, now we know that
uh,
that's a
so
fallacy, but
so I
but go
went
ahead.
back.
Yeah.
I went back to Denver. Was in a practice for a year and a half or so, and I realized it's not my thing. I just
Mm.
was stressed out. I wasn't happy, and so I left.
Hmm.
And then I got sick for a while. I think my adrenals were just shot after all this stuff. And I worked with a healer who she was amazing, and she did homeopathy and herbs and vitamins and energy medicine and all that stuff. And I was just intrigued.
Yeah.
So I went to a meeting in Hawaii. This is 1992. And
Hmm.
there were a number of us from Denver, not
Yeah.
all in class. But I went to this meeting of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association.
Yeah.
And
I think I remember that going to I was in California, I was in Southern California, so that stuff was coming up on my radar all the time too. So you actually went to the holistic meeting that
I
was in Hawaii. I went to, I think, some offshoots of that at like Western states around that same time period. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. We were both kind of had our eye on that. That's
Yeah,
cool. But Hawaii, oh my God, tell me about that.
that was wonderful. And
Mm, so
it was
beautiful.
there that there was a woman named Penelope Smith who'd been doing animal communication for years. It was, I mean, most people had never heard of it. I
Hmm.
hadn't heard of it. And when she did an afternoon workshop for a couple hours, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And
Oh
so
wow,
that's
how
what I did.
awesome.
That's what I did. And
So
I
it's
did,
like that meeting opened up a whole new vista about what was happening in the veterinary world, but in
no, it
holistic
wasn't
side.
veterinary. It wasn't
Oh,
veterinary.
okay. Oh, I thought for some reason it was the Holistic Veterinary
Oh,
Association. It was
yeah,
just
yeah. It was. It was. You're
okay.
right. I
Okay.
don't know that she's ever, I don't know that they've had that again. I don't know. But
Sure.
in those days, they didn't do much of that. But she, yeah, she wasn't a veterinarian, but it was at the veterinary meeting.
Hmm.
And and I knew I wanted to do it, which was a whole nother deal. I didn't study with her. I didn't feel drawn to do that. And I had a few weekend workshops along the way, but mostly I just did it on my own and learned from
Wow.
the animals.
Uh-huh.
And I realized at that time that I had already been doing this communication. What it is it's telepathic communication with animals.
Hmm.
And now it's often called intuitive interspecies communication. And it's it's not communication like making sounds or body language. It's actually, through intuition or focused intent, or however you want to call it. And
Hmm.
I'd been doing it already for years. I just didn't know that's what it was called or what I was doing. I'd been working with dolphins for years. I had been swimming with dolphins a few times, and
Oh my gosh, I had that opportunity once when I was 15 and it was just so beautiful. But I can't even imagine having more than one time to do that. Must have been like magical. But
yeah,
yeah, so I think in some sense that as veterinarians we possibly have that what might be called intuition just based on the fact that we really sense what's going on with the animal with our diagnostics. Because let's face it, there's times when people either number one don't say anything, that's don't bring up the information you need, or number two, which is you know happens, is they lie like how long has this been going on, and they're kind of like, oh, it just happened yesterday, and you're looking at the animal like, no.
yeah.
So I don't know how that plays out, but even fast forward just for a second, isn't there an upcoming seminar that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
deals with this?
Symposium coming up May 8th to the
Mhm.
12th. It's online through University of Saskatchewan. And it's all about there's a wonderful woman. Her name is MJ Barrett. She's a researcher, she's a professor, and she's been studying animal communication and animal communicators for some years. And she's put together this symposium bringing people from really all over the world who are either animal communicators or they're researchers or people interested. I went last year as well. That was the first year. It was amazing. I mean, the field is opening up, and I'm really excited about it because I believe it's going to give some more mainstream credibility to this thing
Right.
that's seen as so weird.
Right, right,
Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is, I guess if we can kind of validate that even in another way, is say if you are really, and I'm going to use a different kind of a way of saying it, tell me if I'm right, in tune with the animal, and you're so much more sensitive in a way, it's got to get you, I don't know, I don't want to say emotional about it, but more like you feel whether or not something is right or not to pursue with them. Because really, if if it, at the end of the day we're taught do no harm, and
Right.
like what you were talking about, oh my gosh, here's these coyotes in cages, we're going to infect them and then it's appalling if you think about it on that level. On another level, while I was in, and again, this is how it hit me when I was in FSIS and in the slaughterhouses, I was just inundated, and it was soul crushing. Here we're at least when we have to put an animal to sleep, it's one that is very ill usually, or frail or what have you. There's a real reason, but here these were healthy animals. It did not work for me, even though I eat
Yeah.
meat. But anyway, go back, that's where you made that real discovery about yourself that resonated. And how
Yeah.
did this affect you as a veterinarian and practicing?
I wasn't practicing anymore. I left
Okay.
practice
Mm-hmm.
and started doing this work. And it took me many, many years to really trust it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not trained to believe this stuff. And
Correct.
I had a lot of flack from veterinarians, from scientists, from people in academia, from even lots of people who work with animals on a regular basis. They thought I was Looney Tunes.
Oh
And it
gosh, that's got to
was
be
hard. It was
yeah, that's got
hard.
to be so hard. Yeah, but do you remember when I sent a note to you and I said, "Hey Barb, is it okay if I post your name because I'm in a Facebook group and it's young women veterinarians, well, way younger than us, let me just say, who are moms, and I'm in that group even though my kids are adult kids. I'm still a mom, and they had commented about animal communicators and really kind of trying to find information. And when
Yeah.
I did have your permission, I put your name, and there were several who were like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much," because I think, dare I say, veterinary medicine changing and becoming so much more with women as veterinarians. I almost wonder that this is part of the reason why it'll be far more accepted nowadays, with even some younger veterinarians here who are questioning what's happening with themselves, and and they brought it up and we're excited to learn about you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think it's not just veterinarians. I think a lot of people, young people, are opening up to things that we hadn't even considered as
Mhm.
possible. A few years ago, I went down to UC Davis. I live in Oregon now, and I went down to UC Davis and I spoke to veterinary students at a lunch meeting. There were, I can't remember now, a lot. I think maybe 70 people in that hall. And I talked about intuition and compassion as tools for healing.
Mm,
And
mm,
like you
mhm,
said, what if you're a veterinarian or you're just working with animals in some capacity and you could actually know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, what they need, what works, what doesn't work? I mean, what a blessing is that? So I think that this kind of work um, is so important. But I also believe, like you said, that anybody that works with animals on a regular basis is already tuned in to the
mhm,
animals, already connected, if you just learn to trust it, you know?
mhm,
So it's not so far out. It's just something natural that we do all the time. We just don't necessarily recognize it or acknowledge it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's some level that manifests that we are communicating with them. Even something as simple as they say, "Oh, watch body language." Hey, body language communication. There you go. It could be something as superficial as that, all the way to much more, very many more manifestations. And so here we are with you. Like, around when was that, after you had graduated, that you left veterinary medicine as an income type of
Well,
profession?
it was 1992, so 9 years after
Okay.
I graduated. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
long time. And I did struggle for a long time financially, but but it was what I wanted to do. And I would work with people and their pets, individuals. I did private sessions a lot. I also did some teaching. I did some speaking about it, but all along, all the time, I was writing, and writing is my vehicle. And because I'd been journaling since I was really young,
Hmm. Hmm.
And a lot of my information comes through writing, and that's turned into books.
Hmm.
So that's been, for a long time, I thought, why don't I just hear them and speak it? Later I could just, the animals would like come in through my head and I would speak it as if I were their voice. And I
Sure.
could work with a person and their animal, and I could be an interpreter that way. But
Hmm.
always it was the writing, and always my passion was the wild animals. And so I just years ago started speaking with different species, the consciousness of whole species rather than just individuals. And
Hmm.
that's where my direction has gone in the form of books now.
Hmm.
I'm just publishing my second book.
Oh, what was your first one? What was your
My
first one?
first one was called Soul of the Wild: Intimate Messages from the Hearts and Souls of Elephants and Whales. And I published
Mm,
that in 2010.
wow.
And I thought I was done with elephants and whales. I really did. I mean, I'd been speaking about them, thinking about, I was done. I wanted to go to all different species.
Sure.
But,
Uh-huh.
but in 2002, I went back to Africa, this time for 3 months. And when I came home, I felt the elephant's presence with me energetically. And I tried to kind of ignore it for a couple days. But then I said, okay, what do you want? And they said, we want to write another book. And I said, but oh my God, I've written a book. What do you want?
I
And
can't even imagine because I can't even get my first book done. And I mean,
yeah,
this is incredible. And side note, you mentioned while you struggled financially. I have to tell you that you're not the only one. Veterinary medicine is not a guarantee. So even if you say, "Oh well, I left veterinary medicine and then I struggled," you know what? That's not even a thing. I think we have to give credit to the fact that you found something that you were doing that was enjoyable, and money is not a measure of success or happiness. And if somebody chooses to measure you that way, that's their choice. Hey, they could do what they want for their lives, but that should have no impact on you whatsoever. I see before me somebody who's really satisfied and excited and happy and doing, really interesting things with their lives. And
yeah,
really, that's
yeah.
kind of what life
No,
is
I'm
about.
fine. I'm fine with the path I've chosen for sure. It
Yeah.
was right for me and still continues to be. I'm still passionate about it. So
Well, dare I say, the fact that you became a veterinarian, everything you learned in veterinary medicine has had some ability for you to really enhance your level of communication. I mean, honestly, you have such an in-depth knowledge of the body of the animals. That's got to be part of it. So
yeah,
that's the way I would look at it anyway.
no, I agree. And I realized that all the things I've done, even before vet school, I was a dog trainer. I
Yeah,
studied animal behavior as an ethologist. And all these things have come together
yeah,
and made
and
me who
built
I
on. Yeah, you just
am
built
time.
on
And
them. Yeah.
I think what happened to me at first, part of the doubt that I went through, although everybody that starts animal communication goes through doubt, I
Sure.
think part of it was I had so much information in my head from vet school, from doing this, doing that, that if I would get information about an animal, I could just think, oh, I knew that. I'm just making that up. It's not really coming from them. And so that instead of helping, it kind of hurt in some ways my ability to trust what I was receiving, because it wasn't that new, a lot of it. But I've come to realize that when you have that kind of knowledge and that perception of animals, it kind of makes a gateway for more information to come, for them to
Bingo.
step in.
Yeah. Yeah. Bingo. Yeah. So here you were in the 90s and somehow you're making a good enough living. I mean, clearly you're surviving
Yeah.
and you're doing stuff that is really who you are and satisfying in that level. So then you got your first book done. Then what happened at the rest of the 90s, or was that pretty much still sort of the
Well, like
same
I
thing?
said, I was doing private sessions with people. I did some workshops, taught some workshops. Um, and I did some public speaking about this, and I continued to write. And so back to the last, 2002, another trip to Africa when the elephants came in, and they said, "We want to write another book." I said, "Why? We've already written a book." And they said, "This information is so important. We want to get it out." And I wasn't very good about promoting myself for my books. It's just not what I did very well. But they want
Mm.
to get this information out. And they also said they have some new material that in these times, it's really important for people to know. So I updated the book. It's been 2 years working on this thing. And finally
Mm.
now I'm done. I'm going to show it to you. Here it
Oh,
is.
it is. There it is.
Yeah,
Oh, what a wonderful, wonderful cover. Book two.
book two.
Ooh, and you're going to be bringing at least one copy for me because I
Oh,
want
yeah.
a signed copy.
Yeah, I'll bring
Hmm.
some copies. I'll bring some
Yeah.
copies.
Oh, that. Yeah. I think you said you'd had the opportunity perhaps to ship over to your brother, and then
Right.
yeah, because this is going to be awesome. In fact, when you see Millie, maybe you can ask her to bring some physical copies as well
Of
of
her
her
book.
books. We do
Sure.
have a few of us that wrote books, and there are some of us who have our websites in our name. In order to, there's barbershore.com and donnadebonus.com, but it's kind of like interesting how we are kind of manifesting different types of
Yeah.
lives other than just veterinary medicine,
Yeah.
because here you are becoming this published author here with a second book already. That's amazing. I know it took a lot of effort, but I'm
And
looking
maybe
forward to seeing
maybe at
what's
the
coming.
maybe at this at the reunion there could be a little group of us and showing our wares or something. Maybe.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that'll really be cool. I could sure send out a questionnaire on the next email just to do that
You
so
like
that
to
people
send out
know.
things, don't you? You're so good.
Well, I that's kind of the thing. Yeah, I had a little bit of a eye towards marketing. But that
Yeah.
said, here you are into the 2000s, and you had your other trip to Africa, come back, you're working on the book, and we're in 2023. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was a long time to get that second one all written.
Well, no, I just started it a couple years ago.
Oh, okay.
I was
Okay. Yeah.
actually doing other writing, which I need to finish. I started a memoir that I've been working on for years, and I really want
Hmm.
to do that. And I've got other things. I've got so many projects.
I don't know anybody who has any, detailed projects like that. Oh, I mean, I do know some, but it seems like when people reach our age, they tend to just kind of fall off into, just mundane types of retirement activities, whether it be playing tennis or golf or some type of thing like that. And I feel like you and I have projects, you know like, because I have a few projects going on
I
at
know
any
you
one
do. You've got
time.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like I need another few hundred years to get them all done,
Is that right? Yeah, yeah.
So the other
So that's
thing,
kind of
I
it's
just want to tell you the other thing I've been doing that I really am excited about, and that's my podcast. And I know you have a podcast too, but I've been doing it for gosh, a year now with a younger woman who lives in Canada, Avantika. And we've been doing this podcast. It's called Animals and Us, Voices of a New Paradigm. And
yeah,
we
that's
interviewed
a
some,
wonderful title. I
oh,
love it.
thank
And I
you.
actually did. I subscribed to your podcast and I'd been listening to it. It's really fun.
Oh,
And
good.
it really opens up horizons. It really you just have to kind of sit with it and just let it permeate. I mean, it might not be for some people, that's cool, but for those who it speaks to, it's really innovative, and I
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Good, good. Yeah, we've interviewed some amazing people. The whole premise of the thing is to talk about animal sentience and consciousness and
Hmm.
communication, and not just animals. We want to expand to plants and trees and all the forces of nature, all the spirits of nature. And
Well, indigenous people believe that very thing. These are not new concepts, and probably the reason I'm so open-minded about it is because I really I actually really had studied a lot about indigenous people when I was in pre-vet time. My all of my social sciences were anthropology, and it had to do with Native Americans, and I just concentrated. So that's permeated for me for 50 years.
Yeah,
So I understand what you're saying. This is nothing that is like, oh, that's weird. No, that's kind of stuff that's ingrained from everything I've read about indigenous people.
it's
And
exactly
so
right.
it's comfortable for me. I recognize it. And that's where I'm coming from, is it just looks obvious to me since
Yeah,
I've
and
been
in
exposed to it
fact,
for so long.
my next Monday, I'm going to interview a Native American elder who lives here for our podcast, and
Mhm.
he's amazing.
Yep.
So, yeah, the indigenous people, the Native Americans, they see us all as relatives, whether you're two-legged or four-legged or what they call creepy crawlies or birds. I mean, we're all related. We're all one consciousness. And that's what the animals tell me a lot, is
Hmm.
that there's one consciousness. There's no hierarchy of souls. It's not like human beings are the top of the line. You know, we're
Hmm.
all doing our part. We all have a particular form that suits our mission, our purpose,
Hmm.
and we're here for particular reasons. And to say that one animal is intelligent and the other one isn't, or they're not as smart as people, they're smart in their own ways. They're intelligent.
Hmm.
They have the intelligence they need for the functions they perform. And so anyway, I just really,
And that's
I
not necessarily all about species. It like what you just said, it could just be whatever animal. Some I I I fully believe that. I've often said, if somebody has the military working dogs, for example, I'll say, well, this particular breed does great, the Belgian Malinois, but there's some outstanding characters in the in that group that are just quite remarkable. And I'm certain that the dog handlers would be able to back me up on that.
oh, for
And
sure.
and
For
those of
sure.
us who are very involved with animals, we see that all the time, and
Well,
it brings us
everybody,
joy.
yeah, and everybody has a personality and an ego persona. But
Hmm.
what I'm talking about, like in this book, is the
Hmm.
overriding consciousness of elephants, not one individual. So yeah, we're all unique, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
But as you said, all connected, and that really, um, dare I say, mimics on a much deeper level the thing we talk about in medicine, which is One Health. And I believe that we have many, particularly the younger generation, who have made it, cried out as their mission that, hey, we need to stop and look at what's happening in the world at large. And they're doing such amazing and incredible things. People, oh, this generation, they're lazy. Da, da, da. You know what? No, they're focused, and they're focused on what matters in life. My kids are this generation, and I'm in awe of them. They have a different way of approaching and thinking about things. Hey, look, from somebody who's been in business off and on for so many years, I am stunned by things like crowdfunding. I think they are incredible, and I think to myself, wow, what a fantastic answer to the way that people are trying to even survive. Something as simple as a GoFundMe, how important it is for people, and it shows our humanity to one another. That's a product of what these kids have come up with to make the internet work for it, you
Right.
know
Right.
and so yeah, don't you know don't be surprised if you see some miraculous things coming up out of this generation. I have a lot of faith and
Oh
hope, and
yeah,
I support them.
I do too. I think they're amazing.
So I
Yeah.
bet you that once you get out there and do a little bit more marketing, that they'll be the ones picking up that book of yours and be very grateful for it. as
That's
as I
great.
said, I'm looking forward to it. Reunion's going to be just amazing. Um, and just all the time I've had talking to people as we're working to get everybody, information about it and people responding to me since I'm on the forefront. So that led to you and I having the opportunity to talk. So I guess that's part of the reason this particular interview's lasted a little longer than some, is that because we've talked and we built upon that here. So is there anything else that you want to mention? You said your podcast is a big deal. Here's your book coming up. What else that you might want to put out there or mention before we draw to a close? Because this has just been, oh my gosh, so remarkable. I can't thank you enough for sharing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been fun. I just want people to know that there's so much more to the animals than what we've been taught to believe
Mm,
and conditioned to believe. They are incredible. And they have this whole world inside, just like we do, and we're not always aware of it. But they're wise,
mhm.
as souls, they're wise. And we are deeply connected. And I really believe a big part of the problem that's been happening in our world, we're in such a state of chaos, is because we've lost that connection with the natural world.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yes.
so I
Yes.
think it's critically important that we embrace nature, we embrace the animals, and instead of just seeing these dogs and cats and horses and cows as just these creatures running around on four legs, to look a little deeper and appreciate how much they offer us. There's so much wisdom there that's been mostly untapped in our culture. And I really truly believe that once you love something, once you know someone, you're not going to hurt them. You're going to do
Mm,
everything you can to protect them, to make their lives as joyful and healthy as possible. So I see that as a big part of my mission, is to educate people so that it will be a kinder world, more in touch with nature and animals and all of the natural world, and as well as one another,
mhm,
because that kindness and respect and love transfers to all beings,
mhm.
including humans. So that's what I would like people to know, that
And
it's
you put that so
possible.
well. Yeah,
Mhm.
kindness matters. Yeah, it's a shame when we have to ask somebody to be kind. You might make a post on, let's say, Facebook, say, have a little issue with something. By the way, be kind in your comments. When did that start, having to
Yeah.
ask people for kindness? But I hear you. I think that's a lovely way to put it. And I am I'm really in tune to what you're saying, and I am very, very grateful for you taking so much time to explain the types of concepts. I don't know that I've ever had anybody do that, even though I've been exposed to it,
Yeah.
of course, from indigenous stuff that and that I've studied and talked to people and so on. But this is from very much, again, the perspective of a fellow veterinarian. And while you know, while you don't practice veterinary medicine, like I don't do clinical medicine myself anymore, I still think of myself as a veterinarian, and it imbues everything I do on some level.
Yeah.
And I know that you have truly built up a lot on what your base of knowledge was from school, and the fact that you've really expanded into the world of the wildlife is so surprising. I had no clue at all, and
Ah,
I'm completely delighted that you brought this into the conversation.
great.
So with that said, I will see you in person.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, how many days? Let's see, it's supposed to be the 29th. So, gosh, about 5 weeks, I guess, somewhere, 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
We're all going to gather together and we're going to see if we recognize each other.
Gosh, 40 years.
Of course,
We've
we're
all gotten
cheating.
older, haven't we? Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, everyone has said that to me. Well, here I am. Here's my picture. Some people don't even want to send me the picture. Just send me the picture. We know we're all older. Why? That's not a surprise.
Yeah. Well,
Oh
thanks,
my
Donna.
gosh.
This has been really, really fun. It's been kind of a little life review, and and it's really nice. And I
You
feel
bet.
it's so interesting. I feel like this reunion has, for me, it's kind of been full circle for me, 40 years training as a veterinarian, now coming back
Hmm.
to the whole veterinary world in a whole new way. I'm sure all of us are coming back in a new way, and it's
Hmm.
very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just looking and seeing what people are doing now, it's all across the map. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And so yeah, again, delightful. And I think it's going to be fun. I hope everybody comes with the approach of enjoying themselves for the 2.5 days that we have to spend together, as well as a couple of evenings. And we've got some actually really cool stuff on the horizon as far as those evenings. I won't give it up right now, but I'll send it out in my mailing and tell people, some updates. But it's all good. And with that said, I will see you soon. Take care.
Hi, thanks, Donna.
Bye.